See what happens. Checking. Oh, here we go. Smart man right here. I'm a smarty man. Woo! All right. That makes sense. Okay, now say something. Oh, you're not coming through. Son of a bee sting. Wait. Well, because what do you mean? I'm testing the... Never mind. Just let me do this, okay? Now say something.
Check.
Yeah, there we go.
Check.
Yeah, there we go. Well, that doesn't sound like anything at all. Speakers, I want to be as the speakers. And that, yeah. Checking. That makes sense. Okay, now say something. But I don't hear it. This is a frustrating, complicated system. It's not. Nothing's happened. Nothing's happened yet. Checking. Now it should be working. It's not. Nothing's happened. Yeah. Nothing's happened yet. There we go. Checking. Now it should be working. Daniel, say something, please. It's not. Nothing's happened.
Does this microphone work?
Yet. There we go. Checking. Now it should be working. Daniel, say something, please. It's not.
Does this microphone work?
Yet. Okay, perfect.
Good.
Yeah, I think so. Say something again.
Check.
Okay.
Chickadee, check.
Yeah, I think so. Say something again. It says it's making it. It's recording something, but I don't hear the. I don't hear it. I don't understand. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Good.
Check 1. Yeah, I think so. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna close Audacity and restart it. That's always a good idea. If something's not working properly.
Unplug it and plug it back in.
Yeah, that's the computer version of plug it back in. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Check. Yeah, now it's working. Okay, everything is working. Skype is on. We got green lights all around here. Stream health seems good. It says good, so that's good.
Doesn't seem like a very medical term.
I don't. It's not a person's health.
You called it its health. Stream health. It's either healthy or.
It's good. Your health is good. Can your health be good?
It's good.
Your
could
health,
be better.
Your health could be good or bad. Well, yeah, you're getting sick, so you have
Could be better.
somewhere in the middle there.
Antioxidants or something in there.
Have you been taking your vitamin C supplements?
No, I don't need to.
Well, obviously that's not true. I've been taking them every day. I find them very helpful. I have noticed a difference.
No, I don't need to take any medicine.
They're like, it's not medicine. It's not medicine.
My body doesn't need that stuff. It's just like it works all the time without it.
Oh, okay, sure. Westworld podcast. Here we go. Here we go.
I'm pretty sure if I ever go to the doctor, they'll like a medical marvel.
That's definitely not true. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I think that's definitely not true.
Nah. Not definitely not true. Like it could go either way.
I mean, it could. I don't know how do I put this gently.
It's a non-starter because I'm never gonna go to the doctor.
Are you one of those people who's afraid of the doctor?
I'm not afraid. I just don't go to the doctor. I haven't been to the doctor in over a decade. Like I haven't been to a doctor or a dentist.
You know how many times I've been to the doctor in the last 2 years? You know how many times? Never mind. In the last year, you know how many times I've been in the hospital? Just not even just. Yeah, I don't know, man.
I mean, I get it. If your body's breaking down, then that's a reason to go. I just haven't had a reason.
See, now it says our stream health is bad. Bad stream health.
Maybe you should take a vitamin C supplement.
Hey, man, if it helps, right? even if it's just like a placebo effect, like, isn't that better than? If it makes you feel better, even if it's in your head, is that not better than?
Sure, yeah.
You know,
and I'm pretty sure like vitamin C, like you can have a lot of it and you're going to be good to go. Like
there's no upper limit.
Things are like 100% of your daily recommended value, but you can have a lot more than that and you're fine.
Yeah, it's true. It's as Amanda used to say, there's no upper limit to vitamin C, so you can keep eating it. Your body doesn't use it all, but it doesn't. You know what I mean?
I don't know how vitamins work. Like, what do you mean your body doesn't use it all? What happens to like it just turns into waste then?
I suppose, yeah, that's right. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a Scientologist. A math scientist. Any of those things. Okay, live dashboard. That is good. YouTube. So it still says bad.
It's supposed to have magnesium.
What about magnesium?
It's supposed to be good for you too.
But like, can you say that about every vitamin and that you're supposed to have?
Yeah, but like some like you only take if you need. Like
right.
Some are like a daily thing, and some you only take if you have a deficiency.
Right. Like, what's the one that you get from B12? No. What's the one you get from sun tanning or from sunlight?
Isn't that vitamin D?
Vitamin D. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds right.
B12 is like energy. You have more B12, you have more energy.
I don't think it's that direct of a correlation.
Well, that's what it says on the bottle.
Well, what about fish oil?
You want some energy?
What about fish oil? How much fish oil am I supposed to have?
You guys want to pick up some energy?
I'm selling some straight energy right now. Okay. Only laced with a little bit of carfentanil.
A little bit's not going to kill you.
Well, that's not what the TV says.
It does, yeah.
I think when I hear them talking about it, they're like, the police say that even a tiny amount can kill you if it's like been done wrong.
Oh,
that's good. I mean, who's telling me about this? They're like, yeah, I really want to have some M's. Was it you that was telling me about this? Their friends? Like, yeah, I really wanted some, and not that you wanted them, but it's like someone was like, yeah, I really wanted some M's, but like I'm kind of worried about this carfentanil thing. But I bought M's anyway.
Familiar, yeah.
What a terrible idea! Like, it's like you couldn't live without it for a minute, just until they figure out this whole deadly poison issue. Rolling the dice. No middle-class white people have died yet, though, so I mean, that's reassuring, I guess, for them.
Okay.
I'm being sarcastic, Daniel. Come on. Pay attention. Keep up. All right, here we go. Let's find the...
Doesn't really track.
I got my episode guide here. You know how much time I spend writing these show notes? I tweeted about this yesterday. I put more time and effort into these show notes than I have probably most homework in the last, like, when I was in college or high school. Definitely high school, but for sure college too, you know?
Yeah.
I easily write point form like a full essay, basically, which generally isn't point form, but it wouldn't be hard to convert this from point form to a full essay. It would be very easy, which is almost how I started writing most of my essays, and then you just like fill in the gaps, you know.
So that's your method.
You get your key points in, and then you tie them together. You string them together, you know. You
weave them.
Yeah, a complicated weave. Yeah,
it's a tapestry.
I was gonna say tapestry. Yeah, just like a tapestry, because they're woven, or like a sweater made by your grandma, or your mom.
Yeah, my mom, but she crochets. She doesn't.
Is that
I guess weaving is like no, it's not the same thing.
No, okay. She'd be very upset.
Yeah, she gets mad. She gets mad if you call it knitting too, which is like it's the easiest thing to always call it knitting. No one says crocheting.
Yeah, no one does. Also, are they different tools required?
So they both require hooks, but knitting. I don't know how it works. Crocheting is 2 hooks, knitting is 1. I think that's the only difference. But they like in her little like Facebook groups, they call knitting like the N word, like
what?
Even though it starts with a K. That's like that's their N-word.
That's their little joke. That's what makes them happy in life, to talk about.
And every time we talk about it, she's like, "Yeah, well, I guess basketball and baseball are the same because they both use balls." And I'm like,
no.
She gets really angry about it.
I mean, basketball and baseball are basically the same, Dan. So she's not wrong. Oh, okay. Let's start here. Let's start. Nice. Okay, good one. I want to create a highlight. Start time. Now would be the now time. I don't know. Get player time. Invalid end time. No, get player time. There you go. No, I don't know. I don't know how that works. I'm not going to press any button if I don't understand how that works. Maybe next time. All right. I got my tea here. What are you drinking?
It's Kokani.
Kokani. No, wait. We're missing something. There it is. No, we're good. We're back. I'm back. Hello everyone, and welcome to another Westworld Tower of Babel breakdown. As always, I am Julian Mush. I am joined by Daniel D'Souza.
Yo.
And we are here to discuss Season 1, Episode 9, The Well-Tempered Clavier. And this is the penultimate episode, which has got to be one of the best words.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well,
I feel like everybody in the world loves that word.
It's a really good word, right? It's although not technically better than ultimate, sounds way better than ultimate, you know?
It's like a more complicated way, yeah.
If you were telling someone that you could I feel like you could fuck with a lot of people. You'd be like, you are the penultimate bartender in this restaurant. They'd be like, oh, thank you, man.
I don't know if it really applies the same way.
And then and then you'd be like, but really you're implying that that you are in fact the best bartender in the restaurant.
Like you're second best.
That's right.
Second to last, sort of.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Be a mean thing to do, I think. But anyway, this is the second last episode for the first season. The second last episode we're probably going to see until 2018. We got next week, hour and a half episode finale, which I'm excited about.
It's going to need it. Fuck.
Yeah, so much to cover. But let me just read the quick synopsis, since that's what we've been doing every week. Dolores and Bernard reconnect with their past. Maeve propositions Hector, and Teddy discovers enlightenment. Just as vague as always. And so I'll just quickly go over what we do here if you are new to the podcast. we are going to recap it, go through the week's events, talk about any theories ongoing, debunked or proven theories, confirmed. Kind of, I wouldn't say look ahead, we'll speculate a bit about what we might think is coming next week. And that's about it. And right now we're live on YouTube, so if you're excited, if you like live podcasts, if you're into chatting with us live, or anyone, any podcast, but specifically us, we're all going to be doing this again next week. So next, I want to say Tuesday. I'm going to say Tuesday.
Tentatively, yeah.
Tentatively, and we'll go from there. But next Tuesday should be when we're doing it, around 5-6-ish Central Time. If all things, well, maybe in the morning. Actually, I don't know at the time, but probably Tuesday. Just keep an eye on our Twitter page at Tower Babble. Wait, what? At Tower Babblecast, yeah. And that is where you're gonna find. I'll let you guys know ahead of time when we've nailed it down, what time it's gonna be. We'll tweet out the link from there, or our Facebook page, facebook.com/Tower Babblecast, and you'll find that there as well. So if you like us on Facebook, you'll be able to find when we are going to live broadcast, and that's next week as well. So let's get into the show, shall we?
Shall.
Okay, yeah, we shall. So I'll just mention before we begin, and every week.
So we shan't.
I guess not. It's kind of about the show. The well-tempered Clavier. The title of the episode, and for the last couple of weeks they've been doing. I mean, trace decay, not something that exists already. Trompe-l'oeil is like a term that exists in the real world. Trace decay probably does as well, but not. It doesn't have any specific reference. Well-tempered Clavier does also have a specific reference. It is, if I read from the Wikipedia page for a second. The well-tempered Clavier, BMV 846 through 893. Is a collection of 2 series of preludes and fugues in all major and minor keys, composed for solo keyboard by John Sebastian Bach. In the German...
Johann Sebastian Bach.
What did I say?
Said John.
No, it's Johann. You're right. But I mean, is that not just German for John?
Close enough. Yeah.
In the German of Bach's time, Clavier meant keyboard. Was a generic name indicating a variety of keyboard instruments, most typically a harpsichord or a clavichord, but not excluding an organ. So
they could have called it the Happy Pianist.
They could have. But I think specifically the well-tempered Clavier, but like that's the name of the piece.
Yes.
Yeah, so like you couldn't call it the Happy Pianist, otherwise.
I just like how penis sounds. Like
okay, sure, yeah, because it sounds a lot like penis. Yeah, totally understand. So here's what I think. It kind of makes sense because the piano, specifically the player piano, played a significant role thematically throughout the series. I think I wouldn't be wrong. There's even a really great line by Dr. Ford in this episode about how if the piano doesn't like the music, it doesn't murder the player, right? And this is obviously a reference to a piano piece, specifically Bach, who's pretty famous. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think of that? Disagree?
The well-tempered Clavier?
Yeah.
I don't know. I had no idea what that meant. I had to look it up, so I didn't really have any opinions on it.
Wait. So you did look it up?
Yeah, no. I knew there's a musical term for what you just said.
Oh, okay. But
like
specifically
in terms of how it relates to the show, I mean, like the piano has been sort of a thematic focal point, even though it hasn't really it's sort of like started a bunch of every scene with a new piano song or whatever.
Typically a cover of a song that had.
Yes. So I guess the well-tempered Clavier is like the host that knows his place, sort of thing.
Sure.
The host that's happy in the part.
I like that. So I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that HBO has confirmed its Westworld season 2 order, and but it's a little bit bittersweet. Like I mentioned at the top, it appears as though we won't see the second season until 2018. And this is news we should have talked about probably last week or maybe even 2 weeks ago, but it slipped through the cracks as far as when I was putting together the planning. And then we have one other piece of news as well that Westworld related, and this could be potentially spoilery. So skip ahead like 30 seconds if you. It's really light, I think, but if you're very concerned about that, just skip ahead 30 seconds. Okay, and we'll go. All right, so Ed Harris plays the Man in Black. In an interview with BBC, let slip that season 2 will have 10 episodes, and then he will be returning as well. Some might consider this spoilery just purely because it means he might not die or whatever. But I think in a show like this, just because an actor is returning could mean literally anything.
Well, exactly, because we're dealing with different timelines. He could be at any time.
It could be at any time. He could return as a host. Like there's so many. Yeah. Like I don't think it confirms or anything. So again, if you're anyone who just skipped ahead, welcome back. So let's get into it. We open with Maeve after her attempted escape at the end of last week. Although, Dan, do you think she was really trying to escape, or was it all just a ploy to get back to the back of the park without dying? What do you think?
Well, I'm pretty sure that's what she said. She wanted to get back to the park so she could start recruiting her army, right?
No. But getting picked up at the end of last week, was that a part of her plan?
It didn't seem like it at the time.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't seem like it. I agree. It doesn't. I don't think it was. Anyway, so Bernard sits with her, and he's trying to assess what happened with her when she murdered the new Clementine. So she does a pretty good job acting when she has to do the whole bring yourself online and the analysis mode thing. I think she fairly convincing. If you're not looking hard enough, I guess, right? But when Bernard looks, as he put it, quote unquote, under the hood, he sees all the changes that she's made, and she grabs him when he thought she was in analysis mode. And I have to mention that it's a good thing he cleared the floor before this conversation. He's never said that ever, right? I'm not crazy.
I feel like I've heard it before, but it might not have been from him.
Like he's having this conversation with Clem, and he needs the whole floor empty.
I guess because he wants to, because remember, this is Bernard. Like he's been rolled back. He doesn't remember that he's a host, right? He's just doing his job. He's the best
I know that
his job or whatever. Like,
which is why I thought it was weird.
But I guess it's because it's an anomaly. Maybe I don't know. Somewhere down the line, he remembers dealing with me before. I don't know.
It's possible. All right, I like that excuse. Then Maeve says, "We've been down this road before." So what do you think? What do you think this means here? Is she referencing the that moment after her daughter was killed, and then she shot herself, or is she talking about? Has she literally had a conversation about sentience with Bernard in the past? Outside.
Yeah, I mean, this whole episode, like, given what we know, given the revelation at the end of the episode, even the way it was structured, you're kind of thinking that the entire time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the large part of me believes that what she's referencing is something that, a conversation she had with Arnold, 30 years ago.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Like not erased, but like had been, pushed down.
Well, so she says we've been down this road before. So if she's referencing Arnold, that would make sense. But she then says, you don't realize that you're one of us. She's able to tell that he's a host. Mm-hmm. And if that was the case, she wouldn't confuse the original Arnold with being a host because he wasn't, right? So
I don't think she's confused at all. Like because she's bumped her app perception or whatever they call that, now she recognizes what he is, and she like.
But why is she saying we've been down this road before? If she's talking about Arnold, this isn't Arnold. She would know that that's not Arnold, right? I don't know. I think it's one of those lines that sounds really interesting, but it's not clear at all.
Well, exactly, because the alternative is when she killed herself, and in that scene, it's host Bernard who's freaking out over the concept that host could do this, and right. They're not really going down that same road there either. It's not like they're having this conversation, so. There's a conversation that happened behind the scenes that we aren't privy to yet, somewhere.
Maybe. Okay. So okay. So she pulls the old freeze all motor functions trick that seems to only work for her and Ford these days, and she explains to him how they are both hosts. He kind of wasn't. He didn't really believe it until I think that moment. She says she won't make him do anything. She's not going to force him to do anything, and that's right before he makes her release her. So a little incongruent there, but that's fine. She then tells him that if he's going to find the truth, to find the whole truth. So I like that, because obviously I think when you reveal that to him, obviously he's gonna want to do that. Is that an order she's giving him? Do you think is that another one of those like?
See, it could be, and that's why he's so adamant about going deeper and deeper later in the episode. Like he's getting to the very bottom of it, right?
Mm-hmm. So here's an issue I have with this week's episode, and it's a minor nitpick, is that most of the reveals or most of the conversations and the stuff that happens between Bernard and Ford is kind of ground we already covered a little bit last week, and at obviously the very end, the questions that we asked at the very end of 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. It's him dealing with understanding that he's not human, right? But we already knew that was already the case, so we're really retreading a lot of ground here that I feel like we didn't have to. The revelation that he's a host version of Arnold created later is new information that we don't really get much to work with. We aren't given much before he shoots himself at the end of the episode, right?
Yeah, because we still don't really know much about Arnold or what, like,
right. All
we know is the significance that he had with Ford. We don't know anything else.
So what I'm trying to say is, as much as I really liked what they did, the scene, the almost like, how would you call it, like a montage at the end, retracing Bernard's steps and giving us clues as to, the hints, showing us the hints that they laid out for us, the show laid out for us, as to that he was a host. As much as they're interesting, those, that stuff was interesting 2 weeks ago or last week, but it's not anymore. We just did this. Like, we literally just did this. Yeah. He's having the same conversation he had 2 weeks ago. So
I mean, there's a logical reason for it. It doesn't make it any more or less satisfying for a viewer, but because he's been rolled back, he would be experiencing those same emotions.
Right.
So that makes sense. It's just like you say, we've seen it all before. However, in reference to that montage, like, those weren't hints. That's one thing I don't like about the show. Is like there weren't a lot of hints. Those were what we saw at the end of this episode were scenes and then like an extra little bit added on, or like a little bit extra that wasn't there before. There's no reason for us to have believed this up until this point.
I mean, that's not true either. No, because they were foreshadowing. The evidence was there if you wanted to find it. We've talked about it before. When we went through the theory that he was a version of Arnold, we literally talked about those exact pieces, and those were there to find if we wanted to.
That was there after the episode where we found out he was a host. Yes.
No, but even from before that, episode 2, when he looks at that image or that picture of Ford and the host version of Ford's dad, mm-hmm. There's a space for a third person there. And it's framed in that way, right? And that information is there, but it reveals itself to you once you understand that he's a host.
No, I get it. But what I'm saying about it being circular, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this either. But what about it being circular is that we don't get any instance of hosts not recognizing pictures that they're not supposed to until the episode we find out Bernard's a host.
That's not true. The very first episode.
What?
The very first episode, Dolores looks at that image of the girl standing in Times Square, and she says, "That doesn't look like anything to me."
Oh, yeah, I guess. It just it wasn't as clear to me then up until that point. That it didn't track like it was a rule of the world. It's just like what would she say if she saw that?
That's not true, because
anything I recognize.
It seemed to me it seems like they'd established the idea that if it clashed with a host's understanding of their reality, it would mean they literally wouldn't be able to see it or hear it, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought that was fairly well established. That doesn't bother me as much. So where were we? Next, Bernard finds out that finds old Clementine and uses her to threaten Ford into giving Bernard full access to his memories. He sees his quote-unquote son and is able to come to terms with the death now that he understands it isn't real. He understands now that it's just a cornerstone for his personality. Ford mentions that it's an homage, that this idea of a tragic backstory. The line that I think he says is, "Arnold believed tragedy was more convincing," and this is why he applied that one to Bernard, and he said it was an homage. Do you think did that have something to do with maybe did Arnold have some kind of similar tragedy in his?
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking. That whole scene is that all these flashbacks that we've been getting of Bernard talking to his son Charlie was really Arnold's memory that had been implanted somehow into Bernard, or something along those lines.
Okay, interesting. Because it could be, maybe not his son, but there's something similar like that with the real Arnold, which is maybe why.
Which is part of what made him who he is. And,
drove him to try to find consciousness for the hosts. Interesting. I like that. Almost his own cornerstone, in real life, because we all have them.
These defining moments, yeah.
So, through Bernard's perspective, we get to see all the hints, like we just talked about, that lead up to the reveal as one of the one from 2 weeks ago. And some of those hints include lines of dialogue between him and Teresa, the conversation with his wife, now with the sound of Ford's voice coming through, which does help explain what a lot of people felt disproved that the Bernard was a host theory, was that specific scene. So it's kind of nice that they addressed that.
Yeah.
You don't like that? You didn't like that? You thought it was...
I didn't like it from the get-go.
Too convenient?
It's convenient to explain it after the fact.
Well, I mean...
who cares? You've already done what you needed to do.
I guess. But we agreed that... I thought we agreed last week that even though we might have saw it coming, I mean, a lot of people did, that he was a host, that it was a well-done reveal.
Yes, no, I like the way that they did it within that episode. I just don't like... again, that scene specifically seems like it's only there to throw you off the scent, which feels cheap because the audience can only experience what you show them, and you're specifically, saying this is for sure not the case, and then later on it is, and now expect us to have some sort of emotional reaction to it.
Right. So you'd have
is superficial.
Right. So because you'd have to believe that Bernard was the host before that, you would have to dismiss that as something else. You couldn't take it at face value. Exactly. You'd have to dismiss it.
And there was nothing within the show that we could use to explain that away. There was no other character there or any of that kind of stuff, right?
It's the only circumstance of that type of thing being done on the show at all. Everything else makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, makes sense.
Makes sense in terms of the rules of the show.
The show doesn't seem to have a lot of rules, actually, to be honest. But
well, I mean,
it's fine.
I love the idea. It's like people are like, so hey, we think I can kind of get behind these like smart bullets that don't kill people but kill hosts thing. That kind of makes sense to me. But like, how do arrows work?
Or knives, right? Or fists, because
or ropes, or whatever. Yeah. So, what else do we have? It was drawn out a bit, I think. It was in the reveal.
I felt like it was like a half hour.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, we all knew what they were driving towards, but they waited till like the last act of this episode to tell us the Bernard Arnold reveal, which I don't know if they needed to wait that long. Like you said, a little superficial, but that's okay. I mean, this isn't.
They want it to be like the crutch of the episode, like the big reveal, right? And like that's part of the problem. Like because we had talked about it so much, it wasn't as significant to us because we saw it coming or could see what they were doing, whatever. I don't know. I kind of like the way that they did it, but like the entire time I was pacing. I couldn't sit down. I was like get to it already. Just tell us his name,
Well, I mean, all that being said, I think it was cool to go back to Bernard's very first memory. So. Beyond retracing the steps of everything we already did 2 weeks ago or last week, the new stuff, like going back to his very first memories, I like the moment when Ford is like, Bernard's like, I want to take me back all the way back. I want to talk to I want to talk to Arnold. He's like, it's impossible. I told you. Arnold didn't build you. I did. And he calls him a liar and all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And then when he finally goes back to his very first memory, he's like, bring yourself online. And I thought that was really well done. And you got to see these very short scenes between Bernard and Dr. Ford, of Dr. Ford almost coaching him into how to become a version of Arnold, that I thought was very fascinating. But in just the sense that, here's this guy who may or may not have murdered or had his partner murdered, but realized he needed help to reach his own ends, to reach his own goals, right? So he recreated his partner in a way that he could control him,
It's so weird too. Like, this is one of the things with like the concept of AI or robotics is like, if Ford created this Bernard, like anything that Bernard thinks is something Ford was capable of thinking. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like having another person.
Right. Here's the thing. So he created. I think you're discounting it a bit. So the AI is so powerful. What him and Arnold were able to create was so strong that he can plant seeds for these AIs, right? So you can tell, and then they can grow from there.
And then it adapts, and it does that. Well, that's true AI, right? That's what we're talking about in the show.
So, so what Ford wants is an AI that can grow and learn and adapt, but there's a ceiling, right? It's like it's like a tree that it's growing all the time, but you're always like cutting off bits of its, like it's what do you call that? Trimming, I guess. You're constantly trimming it, not letting it reach its full potential. That's my analogy for that, I guess. That's the version of that Ford sees.
Well, and then here's the other question followed up. This is more like big picture, but like we keep talking about what is the point of the park? What are they trying to accomplish? And like, to me, if you achieve that is mission accomplished, right? They're talking about creating life, creating consciousness, and
it's like what Geth.
What else do you want? Like,
this is just the Geth from Mass Effect, right? Yeah. But I mean, that's an existential question. That's right. And that's been tossed around in pop culture, science fiction for decades. You could say easily. Like, if the original Westworld came out in the 80s, then and even way before that, So I guess we talked about we've addressed that before. What is the goal of the park? You'd have to assume that if you're a board member and you have these people who created this that has this code that can basically create consciousness, or pretty damn close as far as they can tell, right? You got to imagine that the applications for that beyond just playing cowboy are like pretty insane, right? The things you could do with that, like financially, and if you're a board member, that's really all you're looking at. So it's maybe not one specific thing. Like, we're like, oh well, what are they really up to? It's like, well, maybe it's not one specific thing. It's just kind of like we want to own this technology,
Sure.
So where were we? At the end of this whole trip through memory lane, Bernard is shaken by the knowledge that he has reached this point before on his own, only to have it stolen from him by Ford. So he gets to the bottom of this, and he kind of finally understands the whole himself to some degree, and then says understands that he's been there before, even if he doesn't know it specifically, and is like pretty mad about it. He tells Clem to shoot Ford, only find out that that's not going to happen. This time Ford let him play through it all the way. That's what I think was different about this time versus other times. He let Bernard go through it all, only to have Bernard try to kill him at the end, which I think was disappointing to Ford to some degree. like he said.
Ford thought that he would have understood, like he would have forgiven him, sort of thing.
That he would have seen and hit things from his perspective if he had been able to, if he could see the whole picture. He then has Bernard take the pistol and shoot himself in the head as he walks away through the cold storage area. What do you think is this the end of Bernard, or are we not? Think we've seen the last of him this season?
Well, I mean, I think that's the implication, right? Like Ford clearly has as much control as he needs over all of these hosts. If he wanted Bernard to shut down and wipe him again, he could have done that. Having him shoot himself in the head is pretty deliberate, right?
Right. So how do you? I guess it's not really an issue. It's like, how do you explain Bernard?
Well, look, I mean,
it's like he shot himself. So I mean,
exactly. If somebody stumbles across his body, he just went through this whole emotional thing where he was fired and then rehired, and then he's down there with a naked host, right? Like,
that's true.
He was doing, and then he offed himself. I don't know. Like it's not hard to cover that up. I don't think
that's true. That's
I don't know why he would need to, but other than that, Bernard's been reinstated, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So where does Ford go from here? Does he mentions that he has a celebration to plan, and he wants to tell his new story. Does he create a new version of Bernard? Not Bernard specifically, but a new quote unquote partner.
Like a new number 2 sort of thing. Well, there is that one host body that's being worked on in his little private workshop. I don't know what that's all about, but
maybe that's number.
Maybe that's a new Bernard, and then he's not going to ask these questions. I don't know.
It seems to me that Ford is struggling with the fact that whatever him and Arnold created inevitably leads to this end with all his creations, right? They all eventually reach the point of like self-understanding, and then he has to kind of knock them back down a peg every time. And it seems like Ford is almost annoyed by this. He just wants them to just be happy in their loop. He talks about how I really love, my favorite moment in this whole thing is that like the idea is that Ford is basically trying to save them from themselves. That being human isn't all it's cracked up to be. It's painful, it sucks, it hurts, and you don't have to experience any of those things. So I'm actually doing you a favor by not allowing you to have consciousness.
And like the clear analogy there is the knowledge of good and evil, right? And Adam and Eve eating the apple.
Right.
Like Ford is the god of this world, and he wants them to just be happy and be the hosts. And all that life wants to do is break free from that.
Right.
And they've created life here.
How Michael Crichton-y. So over with Maeve, who is back trying to recruit Hector. She tells him in a super vague kind of way that nothing he does matters, that, quote-unquote, the safe is always empty, which I think is a nice little analogy, and that she needs him to break into hell with her. They then have death sex again.
I mean, if you're gonna, like, if you get to choose how you go out.
Right, except for
I wouldn't want to lit on fire. I don't
think. Was that what was going through your head at the time? Because that's what I was going through my head.
Like, he has a gun. Simple as that.
Do you think maybe they're like they did it until they started to burn? Like, okay, that's enough of this, and shot each other? Because like, man, and like you got to imagine like the reconstruction process of after a host burning to death probably seems like a lot of work, right? I don't know.
Definitely.
That's literally the only thing I went through.
Like, we know that they feel pain, right? Like that's it's not like she can. Well, maybe she could turn it off. I don't know, but even then, there's quicker ways to do it.
Right. If I was Hector, I would feel like I would start backing out pretty quick there because he.
But I mean, it makes for a cool scene, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I think that a lot of that's what this show is it makes for like cool TV. So.
Do you like her idea? Is it like why only Hector? Why not Armistice or anyone else?
Yeah, because he hasn't really displayed any sort of self-awareness up until this point. Like, he just helped her with that one bullet thing, and then he's sort of remembering now. But like, I don't know. Maybe just because he's a badass.
He is pretty badass. Hector Eschaton. Yep, pretty cool.
Although Armistice is still the coolest name of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Over with Teddy and the Man in Black. They're still at the campsite from last week. And Man in Black wakes up. Angela's telling Teddy that he isn't ready to fight for Wyatt yet. We see another flashback to Escalante, that old town that was covered in sand. But this time Teddy isn't a military officer. He is a sheriff. He talks about feeling compelled to do what he did, as though God himself had told him to do it. There's definitely
which I believe earlier in the series is like how they describe their AI, like
right.
They want them to feel that way, that God is telling them to do something, not that they are being told by some artificial thing.
Specifically, the original hosts, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so there's definitely some theories about that, and I think we'll get to that in a bit. So just keep that bit of info in mind. That's especially that stuff with Teddy. Angela, which is the girl who played by Tula Riley. She has a bunch of different names, I think. So just the blonde girl in this scene specifically. But she comes back in a whole bunch of places in this episode. Call her Angela. Then kills him, although we thought she killed him last week. But she kills him for real this week, saying that you might be ready to fight for him in the next life. In the city swallowed by sand. Which is not the most... it's a little on the nose, you know.
It's fairly obvious.
Yeah. So the Man in Black kind of overhears this, and Tula O'Reilly, Angela says again, the maze is not meant for you. She said this like the fourth time, I swear to God she said this. Clearly it's meant for the hosts, but that doesn't matter to Man in Black. He knows where he needs to go now. She knocks him out again, which has got to cause some serious brain damage. It's after all these times to being knocked out, right?
I don't think he's too worried about it.
And then wakes up in classic old-timey Western scene with being tied to a horse with a rope around his neck and the like a tree.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, I guess the idea is like she can't just kill him, so she has to set him up to be killed incidentally. Although the horse is a host, right?
Right. But maybe they're not programmed with enough like recognition to know that. But
the horse would that programming that they have would, like, the horse is required to preserve human life, right? Like,
I guess like a horse wouldn't be able to just run over somebody, right? Like, what if like a kid ran into the road when there was you'd have to imagine something would happen. Well, anyway, let's not overthink it. It's still a cool scene, even though like we have a pretty good idea how it's going to all work out. The scene is done fairly well, pretty suspenseful, effective, I'd say. Exciting. And then Charlotte shows up, and the Man in Black does not like being interrupted. He does not enjoy that. He's mentioned that before, but he allows it this one time because she's a big shot, I guess. I don't know. And Charlotte tells him about Teresa's death, and the Man in Black immediately smells the bullshit here, right? Yeah. The quote, "Nothing is an accident, especially not in here." I love that. He's like, right away he's like, well, Ford, he's on. He knows that it's like Ford did this. There's no question to him for him. Charlotte asks for his vote to oust Ford and tells her she doesn't need him anymore. He doesn't care what happens to him, I guess. So Ford's out, I guess, by the board.
Well, he said he doesn't care, and he can have the. Well, so we know that he is actually a board member now. I think that's confirmed this week.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good, right?
Yeah.
Had I moved that to the debunked or unlikely
I don't remember.
theories? I'll have to check when we get to that section. Because there's a couple theories that were confirmed this week, but the big one still is yet to be officially confirmed, but I think it's all but confirmed, right?
Yeah.
And another hint specifically talking about that is when Charlotte says, you kept Ford in business all those years ago, right? We get a lot of references to the Man in Black's activities in the past, and usually are then cut with scenes with William and Dolores, but that's neither here. That doesn't tell you anything specifically. And then just as he's about to leave, Charlotte says something about how he's can't see beyond the game, and he mentions that maybe she doesn't see the whole game, which I really like that. I don't even know why. Because he does seem a little caught up, right? Almost in an unhealthy way.
Yeah, if you take a step back and look at what he's actually doing,
mm-hmm.
From her perspective as a board member, he's just some crazy dude that likes to spend time at work.
Well, have you tried golf? It's easier on your back. Although I'm not sure if that's true. It's pretty hard on your back. And then last but not least, we have William, Logan, and Dolores. Logan has Dolores and William tied up, and he tells them all about the stuff he's been up to. Apparently, he's become a general, and he even got his own Hand of the Kingpin. Did you see that little hand?
I did notice that. Yeah.
William tries to convince him that Dolores isn't like the rest of the hosts, but he sounds just as crazy as the mom in Stranger Things, so it's easy to see why Logan wouldn't believe him. Right.
Again, makes sense from an outside perspective.
Right, because that was one thing that I liked about Stranger Things is that, yeah, we know she's not crazy, but the things she says and the way she goes about it, she sounds completely nuts. Like you're not going to ingratiate yourself to anybody by saying stuff like "my kid is living through the wall" or whatever, right? Same deal with this. You just sound like a nutso when you say, "No, she's not like the rest of them. I swear, she's special." Mm-hmm. Like you did, like. Use better language, you know? So, yeah, I mean, whatever. Logan basically thinks that he's lost his mind. So to prove to William that he's not quite all there right now, he takes out a picture of his fiancée, Logan's sister, to remind him of the real world. And this is another hint, I guess, to the whole Man in Black theory. And I wasn't sure if this picture would actually come back. I hoped it would, but it was pretty fun that it did, though. Specifically in this way, right? You have to think. I really like that because we talked about it like how many weeks ago? Maybe like even a month ago now. That there was theories around that picture that was found in the very first episode was a picture of William's fiance, and it is. So that's. And if it turns out that he isn't the Man in Black, which again, all but confirmed, I feel like, means that that's a picture of his dead wife.
Get back to that farm,
right? He has to get back to that farm. It's a picture of his dead wife. It all ties together in an interesting way. So Logan then stabs Dolores in the gut, and you have to note the knife here. This is not the first time this knife has shown up, but just note this. It's shown a lot more. Closely, explicitly in these couple scenes than it has been the rest of the series. So note the knife, and he exposes her internal parts, all metal and pistony, like Gen 1 style, right? Because as we know that the original hosts were more machine than they were flesh, where the new ones are more flesh than they are machine. She then escapes runs off, seemingly dying. Likely she'll probably wind up dead in that river. If I have to, you have to speculate.
That's the body that she saw a couple episodes ago or whatever?
Yeah. Last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, it all bleeds together.
Yeah. William and Logan then kind of make up. I guess we're supposed to assume that William is kind of faking all this just to kind of get back in his good book so he can get out of there. In the morning, Logan wakes up to the whole camp full of dead hosts. And so William used that knife and, slaughtered everyone?
I think that's what we're supposed to think, yeah.
He looks legitimately insane.
It's like we always talked about how, first of all those hosts are Gen 1. You can tell there's a bunch of mechanics underneath, like their broken arms and legs, whatever, right? And we always talk about how he's going to become the Man in Black and how that's it's got to be a pretty crazy journey to get from William to the Man in Black. He just did it in one night. Didn't care, just cared everything.
So we have Kyle Tennyson in the chat room right now, and he asks, William massacred a town to prove what? And that's exactly what you're asking. What was the point of this? Just so that the only thing I can think of is that he did that specifically so that none of those hosts could stop him from threatening Logan. That's the only thing I could think of.
I mean, there's that. There's also the way the Man in Black talked about proving something to himself when he went after Maeve and her kid. Maybe this was William, in some fashion, proving that he could do this to these other hosts, and he, I don't know what that really means for his story because he still cares about Dolores. But
it does seem like a pretty sudden turn. I mean, we saw him kind of slipping towards that a bit, but to go that extreme, that quick, was a bit fast.
Yeah.
So he threatens Logan, tells him he's going to help him find Dolores. So I guess that'll all come to a head next week.
Well, it has to. There's a lot of shit that has to come to a head next week. It's a good thing.
Right. And then, meanwhile, with Dolores, who ran off, we see her looking at her wound in her stomach, and then all of a sudden, there is no wound, there's no rip in her shirt. I think this is the most clear-cut version, the least intentionally confusing, that tells us that Dolores is retracing her steps after her adventure with William, like we had talked about last week. This is something that we've kind of speculated on, but it's never been super, super clear. There is definitely scenes where it looks like she's talking to William, but there's actually no one there. It seems as though she's, again, retracing her steps, going through all these events again, just like she did with William. It seems as though she didn't make it the first time. Also, that and that whole town was covered in sand at that time. But looks as though she died at this point. She gets to this part in the current timeline. She's not injured. She's not hurt. And because you have to remember that they talked about before that the host's memories aren't the same as our memories. We see memories kind of like in a haze. We don't see exact details. But for a host, it's as if they're reliving that exact moment.
Well, that's the thing. Like, so the hosts remember everything perfectly, which means they are experiencing time simultaneously, right? They're experiencing past, present, and future at the same time, as long as there's no blockers in the way. Mm-hmm. That's why she's seeing her past self and different versions of herself all the time. Because even when she goes into the town, she goes into Escalante, goes into the church, and there's all those other hosts who are there who can't deal with their like whatever their issue was, right? Their newfound sentience. And she can, but that's clearly in the past. And then she's also in the current timeline entering that same church. Is that what we're supposed to believe?
Yeah. So she's entering that same church because you can see her go down through the confessional, and as she opens the door in her like flashback, it's all smooth, and then you see it cuts to her like prying the door open, and it's like all covered in green stuff, and it doesn't slide well to indicate time.
Green stuff, time, got it.
Yeah, okay. So those first hosts, and this is like back to what we were kind of talking about before, and you mentioned they're in this church, right? And they can't deal with this like new understanding, I guess. We don't exactly know what they're grappling with, but it seems like though that's what they're talking about. And all comes back to that bicameral mind that they talk about, that idea that they're hearing their own inner monologue as a voice from God. And if that was the case, if you didn't understand what was happening, where would you go if you thought the voices inside your head were God? You go to the church, right? So I like that, and the fact that the confessional is where they go through it. It's smart. I like it. It's not the most subtle, but it's fun. Mm-hmm. And so she goes into this downstairs underground section, and it's an older version of the park because there's actual computers there, and the walls aren't made of glass. So she walks past a younger version of Ford. So is this the second time that we've seen this like CGI version of a young Anthony Hopkins? Right, we only saw him once time before.
30 years ago, Anthony Hopkins.
So she storms past him. He's yelling Arnold's name. They're obviously he's like angry. It seems like he's almost angry with him. That he's realized that he's done something. It's that way that like when you're going to the fridge and you're really excited to eat leftovers of some kind, right?
Mm-hmm. And you put your name on them.
Right. You could put, even if you have your name on them, you open it up and they're gone. And there's only one other person in the house that could have done it, and you like scream out their name. You're like, Jesse! That's what it seems like. He's like, what have you done? Why?
Yeah.
So she follows this younger version of Ford to a door. You hear arguing on the other side. It seems to me like this might be the moment, like moments before Arnold dies. I think we don't see her enter the door, but I think the idea is that in that original timeline, she had gone through that door, and then whatever happened inside.
Yeah, because we also find out this episode that she killed Arnold, right?
Right. At least that's her perception. We don't know for she's an unreliable narrator, like the definition of an unreliable narrator, right? So her perception is she killed Arnold, and I'm going to take that at face value. I think that makes a lot of sense. Ford probably made her do it, there's a lot of irony there, tragic irony, and it sucks. But like, it wouldn't make any sense for that to be not the case. So I'm gonna just take it, like I said, at face value, which is a bit of a leap for a show like this to just assume things are true. But that's fine. Anyway, so in the old time, in like the current timeline, she opens the door and goes down the stairs and sits in the chair. And then this is at the exact same moment that the reveal of Bernard Arnold thing is happening that we talked about earlier. And she sits down in the chair and has a conversation with what we now understand was the original Arnold, which would mean I would really love to go back and watch those original scenes between the two of them with that new understanding, because even then, this whole theory hadn't quite been popularized. It was kind of a fringe theory at the time that gained some steam. So going back and rewatching that might be like super interesting and fun. So I'll have to do that at some point.
I think the show definitely does merit a rewatch. You'll have an entirely different perspective once it's all finished.
Mm-hmm. And so she sits down and she asks for his help, but he can't. He says, "I can't help you." She says, "You told me to follow the maze, that it would bring me joy, but all I found is pain and terror," which I think ties back to what Dr. Ford said earlier, like around the same time in the episode. It's not exactly clear when he said it, but about saying how humanity isn't, I'm trying to save you from humanity because it's painful, it hurts, right?
Yeah, life's a struggle, regardless of where you come from, yeah.
So I think this is kind of, it seems as though this is what this is the point she's come to, that she understands that the case, although it's a lot harder, life's a lot harder when you realize the whole past life you lived was all fake. But so she might be
other people are like in control of your life,
right? So that might be a little bit tougher than what most people have to go through. But regardless, then we get the line where she says like, I can't help you, and you know why? Because I'm not actually here. I'm just a memory, and which is weird. I guess, is that like her perception of what he said? Because it's not obvious.
Yeah, her somehow reminding herself. Yeah. Maybe she comes back from this more sane, like more able to keep things together.
Because she was like she was kind of losing it last week specifically, right?
And what's weird about that is like she was losing it in both the current and the previous timelines. So like, something has to happen to bring it all together.
And we'll talk about some theories in a moment about what's happening with Dolores and Teddy and stuff like that. And then she says that you're not there because I killed you. She then, I guess, just leaves, goes back upstairs to the church. We hear someone approaching, and she thinks it's William. She says his name. Turns out it's the man in black. So she might not be wrong, actually, but she doesn't understand that. So she freaks out. She literally is like hyperventilating and freaking out. He says, "Hello, Dolores," again, which is very similar to what he said the first time we saw her. A lot of people are saying that there's a line in this episode where he says, or Ford talks about how tragic events are able to like wake you up in some kind of way. Or I can't remember the exact line, but act as like almost like a beacon, and that tragic event that Dolores encounters in episode 3, I guess it is, when the man in black finds her in the in the barn, that like awoke her to these memories, and that's what started her on the path to retrace her steps. Yeah,
I suppose so. That's episode 1, I think, right? Isn't that how episode 1 ends? When
no,
the man in black grabs her.
I don't know. Whatever episode that is, that led to her walking into William and Logan's campsite.
I see what you're saying.
Right.
We're talking about different things then.
The idea is that the last time we saw Dolores in her like fully in the modern time with Ford and Bernard and all that, was right before she ran, like when she ran away, that episode, and then the cut before she walked in on William and Logan.
Yeah.
Right. So that's this week's episode.
Again, and she when she arrived with William and Logan, she looked like she had just ran away from something. Like she was exhausted and looked like beat up, right?
Right. So that was her again retracing, going back through the original events that happened. Right.
So weird.
It's very confusing. And I appreciate Kyle Tennyson for joining us. He has to take off, but I really appreciate him joining in. So
take it easy.
Take it sleazy, as some people say. So yeah, like I said, next week's episode is called The Bicameral Mind. It's 90 minutes long. It's going to be directed by Jonathan Nolan. Well, it's already been directed by Jonathan Nolan, but you know what I mean. So I'm excited. 90 minutes is a long time for an episode of television. I don't even think most Game of Thrones finales are 90 minutes. They're not usually.
No, they haven't been.
So
they're normally they're like an hour and 8 or something like that at the most.
This is a full hour and a half. This is like a full short film, or not even like a regular length. Like some movies are 90 minutes long, you know. So yeah, okay. So anyway, let's get into the theories, and we have some ongoing mysteries with some new light was shed on it, and specifically speaking. What is Ford's new secret host? Nothing really to talk about there. We have no idea.
Speculate. We already speculated that it was a new Bernard, but then
or a new
why go through all that trouble?
Right, a new person that would fill Bernard's shoes. I think.
Mm-hmm.
What is the fate of Elsie? And so further flashbacks to Bernard perhaps killing Elsie, but without any concrete evidence yet. And now with Stubbs out looking for her, the fate of the young programmer remains unknown.
Well, I think it's come back around. Like now it's more likely that she is alive in my mind. Whereas before I thought she was for sure dead, just because of the way that the show was filmed.
Right.
For them to go to shoot, to cut to her being choked but not killed, and not show us a body twice, and then have Stubbs look for her means that that storyline has to go somewhere.
Unless it's just finding a dead body, which would maybe put Stubbs on a trail, you know.
I guess you set it up for season 2, but...
So here's a theory from Reddit that I'll read out for you. So this is L_duo2 from Reddit, and this has something to do with Elsie. I think we're forgetting about the other force that has been at work in the park, Arnold. We have seen evidence that he is having some influence on the hosts of the park through some way. Either a ghost in the machine or something else. Elsie herself found that someone else had been involved with the transceiver besides Teresa, right? I think there is a chance that Bernard operated under Arnold's orders for a short time. He choked out Elsie, knocked her out, but not killing her. Now maybe she's just chilling with Computer Arnold down in some super sub-basement or whatever. This is probably before this episode aired that he wrote this, but it is possible that... he was operating under Arnold's influence at the time, not Ford's. Because
I guess the thing we don't really talk about, why would Ford have Bernard kill Elsie there?
Right.
When Elsie was discovering something that Ford was not privy to. Right. That whole transceiver thing, that's the board. That's Teresa and the board.
How would he
working against Ford.
Right. And how would Ford even know that was that she was there, right? So
it's interesting.
This ties in nicely with a friend of the show, Max, who asked us to touch on this, as he put it. It makes no sense that Ford would want Elsie dead, and I think you covered that well. So it's likely that she's alive.
I hope so. She was cool.
Although, are the Ghost Nation, are they part of Ford's narrative, or they were already there before, right?
No, I think the idea is the Ghost Nation were adapted for Ford's narrative. That's why they don't follow Stubbs' commands. That's when he tells them the free motor functions. Pretty much only Ford can control them, I think, is what we're supposed to believe.
Although, if that's the case, then did they not encounter the Ghost Nation? No, that's not true, because William and Dolores encountered them.
That's right.
But
back. Again, that's assuming the timeline thing.
Right. Which, again, we are.
No, and I think they were always there, but he's adapted them to his new Wyatt timeline.
Right. Okay, that's possible. And so Stubbs went searching for him. I don't know if we touched on that, but I guess we can touch on it now. Stubbs goes looking for Elsie alone. Never a good idea, and gets taken out by these Ghost Nation Native American hosts that don't respond to his command, like he's talked about. So do you think that he's going to end up waking up tied to something next to Elsie? What are the chances of that?
Classic. Something along those lines. I don't think that's any way to kill off a character if that's the route they want to go.
Right, down. And obviously that's. I feel like they've been more subtle about things, or not subtle, but like more elegant.
Tried to be.
Yeah. When it comes to character deaths, which we haven't got a lot of, obviously, but if you don't count the hosts. So, what are Ford's true motivations? So those are another mystery that we've had kind of been swirling around. In episode 9, Ford reveals to Bernard his origin, but then he has him killed. He says something about letting him tell, about having to want to tell his stories. I think he believes that humanity isn't all it's cracked up to be, like we talked about, and the consciousness that Arnold is striving to achieve in the host was no blessing, but a curse. The old ignorance is bliss cliche.
See, but if that's the case, why would Ford be writing in the reveries and like making the host that much more complicated?
I think he has there's a distinction for him. There's a distinction between achieving as much humanity as possible without crossing over the consciousness line. Does that make sense? Sure. He's always towing the line. We want them to be as real as possible.
Wants the most realistic simulation possible.
Right. Exactly. He wants to be able to control. Dan, the man is like all about control. He needs to control everything, right? If they can make their own choices, he can no longer control them, and that's not how he wants it, right? So I think really, like I said, what is Ford's true motivations? I think it really is that he just wants to maintain the status quo. He wants to be able to tell his stories. He wants to be able to live in this world where he makes the rules, and he doesn't want anyone fucking with that. And I don't think there's any further goal for him.
I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, we don't have any evidence to counter that. I guess it's just that seems pretty like low stakes. You know, like why would he be going through all this like bullshit and killing people just to maintain that?
Yeah, I mean, Dan, people go through a lot to maintain control, right? They'll do almost anything. And once they have a taste of power, they'll, I
don't know. I think we'll find out next episode that he and Arnold were working on something much deeper than we've been led to believe. I mean, that's always been the case. Like that's been the implication. But as to what that is, who knows?
I mean, I love when Ford talks about Arnold. Like he was disturbed, and who knows why he was that way and stuff like that. I think it's a lot of fun. We have very, very few interactions with actual Arnold. If we go back and retrace it to actually understand what he's striving for or why. So he very well could have been like fully fucked up at the head, right? What happened to Arnold? So we do have an idea. We know he's dead. We believe that Dolores killed him. We don't know the exact circumstances surrounding that death. Those things still remain unknown. So I imagine, again, that'll probably be cleared up next week. How self-aware is Dolores? I think we can both agree that she is one of the few hosts that have reached, even like as Horde mentioned, or as Bernard mentions before he kills himself, that he's going to finish Arnold's mission, find all of the self-aware hosts. Is that what he said? The self-aware hosts, and free them? Is that basically what the plan was? She's obviously one of a few that have become self-aware.
Well, she's not fully self-aware. Like she's struggling with it.
Well,
right?
so there's a line that I really like in this episode, where she says, in a conversation with William and Logan, between William and Logan, and they talk about taking her. He's like, well, what are you going to do? Take her out of here? And what are you going to do with her? And stuff like that. And then she kind of interjects with saying, like, if it's so great out there, why do you people keep coming in here?
Why is everyone clamoring to come in here yet?
Right. And the idea is that, she shouldn't be able to hear those things. That she understands that there's a world out there. It's hard to know for sure if it's not just an abstract idea. Maybe she's thinking of the West itself, instead of just the park. But if that's the case, then she does kind of have an understanding of that.
She's becoming self-aware. She's one of the few hosts that is,
or was before.
Dolores is the key.
It's perhaps that she was before and then was rolled back by Ford, right?
That too, yeah.
And that, you really think about how. What a thing that is, right? To reach self-awareness, to achieve that level of consciousness, right? I just imagine that, to have it taken away from you and then being like, that'd be like becoming a human and then being knocked back to like a Neanderthal, right? it's pretty like I don't know. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. It's hard to wrap your head around. You know.
I guess the only like silver lining to that is that you wouldn't be aware of it, so you wouldn't be aware of how shitty it is
until you found out that it's happened, again, right? And then we have what is the maze? Dolores speaks about finding the center of the maze, and that it brought her pain and suffering. Are we led to believe that the maze is beneath that like the center of the maze is beneath the church in Escalante? And if so, what is...
It's so weird. I always, like, throughout the series, I would always looked at the maze as sort of a metaphor, not a physical thing, but it's more and more seeming like it's actually a physical, like Maeve dies in that one scene, whatever, and she, like, lies down in a giant symbol of the maze, and now it's about physically going somewhere. Like, it's less...
But I think it's less of a... It's a combination of the two. It's the term maze. It's not that it's literally you go in there and you have to find your way to the center, you know? There's a bunch of dead ends and stuff. It's that there is a hidden location, like a hidden place, and the maze itself is the park, you know, the center of the maze. Sure.
And it's going to revolve around Teddy, given what, like, I don't know if you remember a couple episodes ago, they said something about how the maze is centered around a man who's died 1,000 times or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, like,
he said
Teddy throughout that.
Teddy talks about, what does he say? He's like, they say that the maze is an amalgamation of all man's... all of his choices, everything he's done.
Sure. Something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing.
It's a really good scene. It's like 3 episodes back, and it's really good.
But also with this episode, when Angela kills him, she's like, "You're not ready this time. Maybe next time." Like that. Yeah. That's what leads me to believe that Teddy's going to be at the center of this somehow.
Right. So let me get into that right now. How does Wyatt play into everything? Teddy helped Wyatt at Escalante before being killed himself. The new memory was created. The new memory was created recently of him helping Wyatt, but it's likely that the events that took place in that town are based in reality. And this is something they've touched on before, that the best memories are fiction is based in truth. Mm-hmm. And so the new theories have suggested that Dolores is in fact Wyatt, was
Dolores is Wyatt.
Yeah, and which is why he feels compelled to follow her. Or him, in his new reconstruction of the memory, right? There's that scene from last week where she's shooting all those people, right? And then goes to shoot herself.
Yeah.
That perhaps
and this week we have Teddy massacring that same town.
Right. So we have Ford has Dolores murder all these people. Maybe Tex and hosts, it's hard to say for sure, but this whole town has Teddy help him. She kills Teddy at the end, or the other way around. He kills Dolores, right? Is that how it works? I can't remember exactly. It's hard to say exactly.
No, at the end of Teddy's thing, he gets shot in the chest by his version of Wyatt.
Right. So then Teddy. Right. So then
Dolores. That's also right?
Right. So then, however it worked in real life, it's likely that Dolores killed Teddy, then shot herself. In that original version, and this is kind of like a retelling to some degree of that, and again, it explains kind of why he was compelled, beyond the whole he was told to do it, because he is so attached to Dolores, right?
It would seem weird for them to write in that he's like in love with her and all that stuff. If that were the case, like you'd think they would want to keep them further apart unless he's some sort of control for her.
Well, no, that's that he's always been that way, right? His job is to keep her in a loop, right? That's always been his job.
Yeah.
So, I guess we'll just touch quickly on confirmed theories. We know that Bernard is a host. Bernard is a host modeled after Arnold. Those are two fan theories that are officially confirmed.
Pretty big ones.
Yeah. I don't want to retrace. We kind of already went through that whole thing. We don't need to really go through that again. Mm-hmm. But I do have a new theory. That I will get to in just a sec. We should just finish touching on the Wyatt thing. I think that kind of covers it all. Yeah. Okay. So I have a new theory here. This is one from Reddit, and this one I'm paraphrasing. This is from an IGN article. This theory is a bit of a stretch, but a fun one to think about. One Reddit user argues that Charlotte uploading all the park's data into Abernathy is no accident, and that Arnold uploaded his consciousness into Abernathy before he died. Clues? She quotes Shakespeare to Sizemore. Abernathy also quoted Shakespeare. The photo Abernathy finds that causes him to suffer our paradox could be Charlotte's mother, which in this case maybe is, who is seen in Dolores' flashback wearing a white lab coat, alongside a man, Arnold, also wearing a white lab coat. The theory suggests that Charlotte is now going to smuggle both her father and his coat out of the park.
What the fuck?
It's so, that one's a bit crazy. Here's where it bugs me.
I actually really like that.
I like it just in like for the theory itself, but I don't like it because of, I think, where it kind of comes from. And this is a problem that that Star Wars faces all the time, and it really bugs the hell out of me, is that why would Charlotte be Arnold's daughter? Oh, because she's the only other black character in the entire show, right? Why would is there a black person in the new Star Wars? Oh, it must be Mace Windu's son or daughter, right?
Orlando's.
Orlando. It drives me insane. It's like,
well, with Star Wars that's different. That's a problem that they had when they created that world.
Well, that there's only one black guy.
they screwed up.
There's only one black guy and only one woman in the entire in all of the galaxy. It's also a product of its
sort
time.
Of the case in this one too, right? That's just the way it is. But right. I don't think we think about things the same way anymore.
I don't, which is why I don't really like
just because a character's black doesn't mean they come from.
That's like this is kind of where this kind of is where it starts, right? Is that Charlotte's Arnold's daughter because again they're the only two black.
Okay, so there are but I don't know.
There's more to it than that too, obviously. But
here's one thing that the show that people have pointed out that I hadn't noticed, but Arnold Weber is was an anagram? How does it work?
Anagram
for Bernard Lowe or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's and then her name is Charlotte, and his kid's name was Charlie, and they're going off of some sort of past thing.
Right.
Charlotte's
Weber?
No.
Charlotte's Weber?
We're just
just throwing. Yeah, right. Okay. But I just thought I'd throw that out there. That's kind of just something.
Interesting, though.
Yeah. We talked about what we thought Westworld would maybe test for something else. We kind of touched on that earlier. Just kind of the idea that the IP, the code itself, is the other thing. It's beyond just the playing cowboy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other human characters are actually robots, still in play. There might be one of those reveals next week as well. And then, of course, the theory to end all theories here: the Man in Black and William are the same person in different time periods. Again, this is all but confirmed here, right? So in this episode alone, we have Charlotte saying, "It was you who helped Ford stay in business all those years ago." The knife, it's the same knife. It's not just looks the same, it's literally the same knife. The one that he uses to cut the rope above his head. It's the same knife that he holds to the throat.
I mean, there's nothing really significant about the knife. It's just a big hunting knife, but it's the only one we've seen, and we've only seen it with two characters, really.
Yeah, and the hilt is the same. Like we do a close up on the handle of it. It's the same. It's the same knife. It's not just a similar knife. It's the same knife, and it's not you wouldn't think, oh well, they're just saving money with props, right?
No.
That is not the case.
I get the impression they weren't really concerned with saving money with this show.
Yeah, that's right. We get the impression that William's also gone full black hat at the end of this episode, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
We have the understanding with Dolores, with that cut between her having the knife wound and not having the knife wound, that again, it seems like there's two time periods playing out here. If that's not it's not confirmed, but it's as close as you're gonna get. The Man in Black knows exactly what the city swallowed by sand is, which could be a coincidence, I guess, if you want to be that guy. But it's also we know that William saw that exact thing last episode,
and he's the only character other than Ford that has been there that we've seen.
That's right. The
Dolores,
and the young version of Ford. So again, it's just, if we know this is going to come to a head next week, it's going to be, as much as we know that it's going to come, I'm still excited to see how they do it. How are they going to reveal it? Is it going to be one of those face, where you have William's face and then it transitions to the exact same shot of the Man in Black's face?
Like what Game of Thrones did this past season.
With who?
When Bran was learning about was in the vision watching Ned Stark learn about the little baby.
Yes, exactly.
And it went right straight to Jon's face.
Yes, It's exactly right. It's going to be... Well, I mean, because that's not clear. That's not exactly laid out.
That's pretty
But it's as clear as you're going to get, right? But this is like... It's going to... It'll do that transition, plus there'll be more to it than that. Maybe we'll find out that Man in Black's name's actually named William. That would be a pretty good way to do it, right?
Yeah, because they haven't given him a name. Nobody has ever said anything to him. Like, no one's ever addressed him.
Does it always feel like they're like jumping through hoops by avoiding having someone say his name?
You know, it hasn't felt unorganic yet. To me,
I keep coming back to this conversation with Charlotte today, like in this episode. Like, would there have been a moment where she would have used his name? She's kind of like...
could have been, but like, how often does she use other people's names? She used Teresa a lot, but only when she was talking about her, not to her.
Yeah.
And when she's talking to Lee, she doesn't call him Lee.
Right. I mean, like, there's that moment with Stubbs where he's like, "This man is like, wants to do this. Like, should we let him?" He's like, that man gets whatever he wants, right? That man, like, you know, it's like that kind of stuff. I guess we could nitpicky, but they'll tell us his name next week, right?
Yeah. And it's most likely going to be William.
Yeah. What if it was Logan this whole time? Which I feel like that's like the counter theory, which I think is a little silly. But all right, I think that does it. Unless there's anything else, I don't think there is.
I'll just mention, like, you're the only one who's going to appreciate this, but when I was telling my family about the whole Bernard is Arnold theory, my sister, like, her mind was blown because my dad's name is Arnold and his middle name is Bernard. She thought it was a whole kind of conspiracy.
That's pretty funny, though. Oh, actually, there's a couple more here. I guess I could say there's a theory that the Man in Black was involved in the critical failure 30 years ago. See, that I was pretty on board with this. I think it's still possible. It seems much more plausible, though, that whatever that critical failure was had much to do more with Dolores than it did with William and the Man in Black. That it happened...
It's going to be William / Man in Black who, I don't want to say saves the day, but clearly they said that he kept Ford in business all those years ago. Like, he's going to be whatever stops the park from like going full nuclear.
Right. I mean, Escalante is buried by the time that William arrives. See, that's what I mean. So Escalante is already buried by the time that William arrives for the first time at the park. So unless that critical failure was what happened after it was already buried, unless the critical failure was what happened at Escalante before it was buried. So it depends on which one that is.
Yeah.
So if it's post buried, then he is involved or will be involved. Will have already been involved. But if it's pre-buried, he's probably not involved. And then we had talked about weeks ago the photograph that that was found at Dolores' farm in episode 1. The picture makes its first appearance since then, except it's not in the present time frame. It's obviously not all tattered. You know, that's another hint towards the multiple timeline theory, by the way, is like, how does he have this photo? If this is the same timeline, there's no way he has the photo, right? Right? Like, if that's not a confirmation, I don't know what is. We learned that the picture is a picture of William's fiancée and Logan's sister, and though we have yet to have official confirmation, that would also mean that it's his dead wife, which is pretty sad. And then we have to speculate, how does William lose that photo? Does he bury it on purpose? Does he give it to Dolores? How does it end up at the ranch? But I guess we'll find that out next week.
Yeah. Jesus. It's a complicated show, man.
Lots to go. Lots to... So what was the theory that Arnold the Man in Black was a board member? Yeah, I put that into debunked or seemingly less likely. We can move that to confirmed.
Yeah. I
can move that to confirmed. When I was putting this all together last night, I never went through this section. I wanted to move something to it, but I couldn't really. Nothing. Although we got some confirmations, there was nothing that we could explicitly say wasn't true yet either. So, let's see, confirmed theories. Well, that's fun. I always like adding a new one to this. Well, there you go. On that note, I think we can wrap it up there. I'd like to thank anyone who tuned in live for this episode. And if you did miss it, we are doing next week's live as well. So tune into that. Keep an eye on our Twitter page at Tower Babblecast, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast. That's where you're going to find when it's going to be exactly. I gave an hour's notice this week. I'm trying to give you more. I'll maybe try to give you a day at least, and then remind people, leading up to it as well, just so we can make sure everyone is aware. And a nice review on iTunes would be nice if you got the time. It doesn't
always nice.
Yeah, it is nice. And it would make a huge difference. There's a lot of Westworld podcasts out there, and if you like ours, helps us stand out from the crowd. So, on that note, I think we can wrap up, and we will be back next week again live and talking about the hour-and-a-half finale of Westworld.
Later.
Lates. Damn it.
Like I said later specifically so you wouldn't be able to say lates.
I think, Dan, that joke that you think happened in Community is just in your head. I think you might have made that up.
I promise you it happened.
If you can find me the clip, I will believe you. Until then,
Season 1, I don't know what episode, but Season 1.
Remember the episode because it didn't happen.
It's like a very minor joke. It's not the episode doesn't ride on it, but
no, I get it.
He says lates to Britta, and she said, "Isn't the word later already short enough?"
But
that's all it is.
Who says it to him?
Vaughn, her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend. At the
time. Oh, right. I'm still not sure if it's his first name or last name. Right, that guy. Okay.
Yeah. I'm telling you.
If you can find me that clip, I'll believe you, and I might even stop saying it, but I can't guarantee that either.
Well, I'm not gonna find you a clip. What do you?
Why not? What do you mean?
What do you think this is?
I guess I could tune out of the old live stream. Thanks for listening. If anyone is still around, we appreciate your tuning in. So we'll be back next week.